Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to be analysing William Blake's poem The Little Black Boy, published in 1794 in Innocence and Experience. This video is aimed at students studying Blake for their A-level, but it might also be useful for students of other levels and qualifications as well. So hopefully it will be useful. This poem, as with all of my videos for Blake, we're going to start by looking at the summary. And in this poem, we have a black child speaker, who is recalling the moment when his caring, compassionate, loving mother sat down with him under a tree and taught him all about God's love, which is represented symbolically by the sun. Typical with Blake, we have quite simplistic imagery like trees and flowers and the sun and the moon and all these kind of natural images, which often are metaphorical for something else. In the poem, the mother teaches that despite the child's black skin, he will bask in the heat of God's love in heaven. And then what the black child does is he goes away and then speaks to a white boy to pass on his mother's lesson, and he pledges to shield the white boy from the sun, suggesting that both of the boys will seek eternal happiness in heaven, in the afterlife. Although it's implied that both children will make it to heaven, Blake seems to be suggesting that the black child is spiritually richer or in a better position because of the hardship that the child has had to endure through his life because of the colour of his skin. Whereas the white child, being white-skinned, has been sheltered from the same kind of suffering. Of course, there's no shortage of social and historical context with Blake, and one of the things to bear in mind with this poem is this was written at a time when slavery was legal and the campaign to end it was still in its infancy. So Blake, of course, was well aware of the social commentator that he was, that the slave trade was an indictment against people's freedom, particularly black people's freedom, and no wonder he then writes about this in his collection of poems. So the poem is one of the longer ones, actually, from the collection. It stands at 7 stanzas long. So it is designed to be slightly longer. So what I'm going to do, as I do with all of my Blake videos, is just go stanza by stanza, giving you some of the main annotations. I'm not suggesting that I give you all of the annotations, because with English there's always more to find out and research, because there's a lot of information out there, but my videos should give you enough insight in order to speak about the poem to some extent in an essay. Okay. So in the first stanza, the child said, "My mother bore me in the southern wild, and I am black, but oh, my soul is white. White as an angel is the English child, but I am black as if bereaved of light." So we've got the possessive determiner my there, reinforcing the fact that our speaker is the black child. And remember, the speaker has just had a lesson from his mother. The southern wild is Africa. And I just want you to contextually think about this. What would have been Britain's view of Africa and its people at the time this poem was written? And think about what the connotations of wild are. And to compare Africa with England, for example, which setting, which country, which continent, whatever you want to call it, would have been considered more advanced? So just think about contextually what connotations there are from suggesting that Africa is some kind of wilderness. And of course that taps into the thinking of the time. In this opening stanza, we have this contrast, this binary between black and white, and recently I uploaded a video all about the contrasts and binary oppositions that occur in Blake. It's at the end of the social and historical context video for Blake. Lots and lots of contrasts, and of course the main contrast here is this disparity between what is white and what is black, and what the meanings of those are. So because, for example, the child says, I am black-skinned, but my soul is white, it's suggesting that Blake, or the speaker, is going below skin-deep connotations. There is a sense here that the speaker is trying to establish some kind of equality, to see past skin colour. To what extent here, for example, is divinity or divine whiteness linked with being English? And to what does that mean then about how black people are perceived or were perceived at the time? Of course, this binary challenges the idea that black means bad and white means good. So there is a degree of mixing of that, blurring of that binary here, encouraging us to see past skin colour to the person, to a person with emotions and feelings that everybody has. And if you're thinking about the slave trade, then colonisers, who are often white, justified their atrocities by looking down on those with black skin. So people with black skin would have been seen as other. They would have been seen almost as, almost like foreign aliens. They would have not been seen as the same as the mainstream. They would have been othered and seen as an outsider. So there is this contrast here, and this degree of wanting to merge black and white together to see past skin colour. In the second stanza, the child says, my mother taught me underneath a tree, and sitting down before the heat of day, she took me on her lap and kissed me, and pointing to the east began to say. So the next stanza is the beginning of her lesson. Unlike other poems by Blake, here we have quite a positive and harmonious relationship between child and parent, or child and caregiver. In some of the other poems, for example, that's not the case. So this is a positive depiction of a parent-child relationship. You might get a question, for example, about the presentation of parents or caregivers in relation to their children. So here we have a caring, nurturing, good relationship. The heat here can have both a literal meaning, meaning the heat that we feel if we're stood by a radiator or stood in the sun, but it can also be a metaphorical heat, because it goes on later in the poem to mean God's love. So feeling the heat on your skin in this poem, the mother is suggesting, is symbolic that God loves you, because you can feel his love on you. Okay. We've also had a tree in other poems. The poem that springs to mind is The Echo in Green, with old John sat under a tree. Here you might think of the tree of life connecting heaven and all forms of creation. In Genesis, it's a source of eternal life, for example, and the tree could also represent wisdom and how man and nature are united. She's sat under the tree, of course. And it also introduces us this idea of something giving shade, which becomes a little bit more important as the poem progresses. She sat the child on her lap, and kissed the child, again suggesting of that great relationship. It's a caring, affectionate, productive relationship. And she's pointing to the east because that's where the sun rises. And that sun is a symbol of heat, metaphorically God's love, but also light and renewal, the sense of a new day, for example. The third stanza tells us about what the mother said to the child. So this is the mother's dialogue. And she says, look on the rising sun, there God does live, and gives his light and gives his heat away. And flowers and trees and beasts and men receive comfort in morning, joy in the noonday. So this is what the child is remembering the mother saying to the child. As we said, the heat is metaphorical for God's love. And she says the sun almost, and the feeling of heat on the skin, is metaphorical for the fact that despite your black skin, you are loved by God. You're not excluded by God because of your racial differences. And you've got this list here of flowers and trees and beasts and men, suggesting this harmony between nature and mankind. That kind of listing going on here. Um, and at the bottom here, comfort in mourning during the noonday. There is a spiritual comfort here from feeling the heat and from feeling loved by God. Um, as I'd already said, many people at the time would have thought black people were other or savages. They came from a distant land where savages lived. And this poem is really challenging that and suggesting that black people are also worthy of God's light, in brackets, his love as well. In the fourth stanza, her message, her lesson continues. And she says, "And we are put on this earth a little space, that we may learn to bear the beams of love. And these black bodies in this sunburnt face is but a cloud, and like a shady grove." So the dialogue continues from the mother. And there is an awareness here of the smallness of the earth in comparison to the universe. It's quite a humbling image, really, that, if you're going down the philosophical route of thinking about the meaning of life, why have we been born? Why are we so lucky to have been born on the only planet that we know of in the whole universe that has life on it? So the idea that earthly life is seen as a preparation for the rewards in heaven, which is, of course, Christian teaching. Because the child has black skin, there is a defiance that the child has that the white child does not. So the fairer your skin, the easily you burn. So I'm quite fair-skinned. I burn incredibly quickly. But if you're black-skinned or darker-skinned, it's a natural protection. So there is a degree of defiance against the sun here. There is a resilience and power from being black-skinned, which is something to feel pride over, not shame. It's a quality that not everybody has, for example. And the innocence belief, of course, is that happiness and redemption protects against the realities of the world. So metaphorically, perhaps, the innocence of the child on top of his black skin is again creating that defiance against the realities of the world, which might be dystopian. And then you have this reference to a cloud, and that links to that shade idea from the tree in stanza 2. The mother tells the child his black skin is just a cloud because the skin colour is irrelevant when considering eternal heavenly reward in the afterlife. So in the afterlife, the child's skin doesn't matter. Clouds and trees create shadows, which offers shade. And the mother is suggesting the same is true for dark skin. So just like a cloud offers a child shade and protection from the sun, so does their dark skin. Into the next stanza, the last stanza where the mother is speaking, she finishes by saying, "For when our souls have learned that the heat to bear, the cloud will vanish. We shall hear his voice saying, 'Come out from the grove, my love and care, and round my golden tent like lambs rejoice.'" So the cloud again, referencing black skin. Once in heaven, skin will become irrelevant. Skin colour will become irrelevant. So the cloud could also be a metaphor for the hardship of life. For example, if you are the victim of racism, unfortunately, chances are that's going to be something that black people or people of non-white heritage are going to have to deal with for their whole life, because racial segregation and abuse and prejudice, unfortunately, is often endemic. It's so firmly rooted in people that it's very hard to eradicate. So perhaps the cloud is representative of the prejudice that the child feels during his lifetime. But when that child passes away and he will aspire to the afterlife, that hardship will dissolve like a cloud does in the sunshine. Here, this is God speaking, "Come out from the grove, my love and care, and round my golden tent like lambs rejoice." That's what the mother is saying God will say to the child. And here God is welcoming and inclusive, which is at odds with the kind of the punishing, tyrannical God that we might associate other poems with. So the mother here symbolises a tender and selfless love, which is a utopian parent-child relationship. She shows concern for the child's self-esteem and empowers the child by making reference to God's love and acceptance, regardless of how society may perceive people with black skin. So the mother here is doing exactly what a parent is supposed to do, which is to encourage their children and to give them a sense of empowerment and to see past societal imposed differences. And you've got typically there with Blake, the synonymous relationship between people and fields. So the grove is a field or a green space. And you've got also lambs, which are again synonymous with purity, sacrifice, innocence, and positive vocabulary like rejoice as well. So positive things. It's a positive lesson that she's giving the child. As we come into the penultimate stanza, the child, again, the black child, continues speaking. So after the mother gave the lesson, the black child approaches the white English boy and tries to pass that lesson on. Thus did my mother say, and kiss me again, and thus I did to the little English boy. When I from black and he from white cloud free, and round the tent of gods that like lambs we joy. So he's now turning to the white English boy. But again, you've got that word when, which is a future tense, suggesting that this could be just naive conjecture. I spoke before about in the social and historical context PowerPoint that children are sometimes presented as naive. And you could argue that the black child is also presented as naive here, because he thinks that society is perhaps as simple as his mother's lesson. Sometimes, of course, parents do speak to children in a very idealistic way, which is without the realities of the situation. So that naivety might be being shown here in how he approaches this English boy. Basically, what he says is that there is a greater harmony between black and white people if we wanted there to be. And again, it might not be as simple as that, unfortunately. Notice in this poem as well that the white child doesn't speak, so we don't know what the white child says or what the white child thinks. And again, that could reinforce the black child's naivety here. And he says to the white child, when they are both free of their bodies, they will delight in the presence of God in the afterlife that loves them equally. And again, we've got lambs here, lambs symbolic of joy and innocence. And the child explains that the white boy's skin is also a cloud. But remember, the idea is that because of the black child's skin, the black child is going to suffer more hardships in life. So the question is, perhaps the black child doesn't understand that the white child doesn't have the same hardship, perhaps, as the black child. And then in the final stanza, the black child promises to shade him from the heat till he can bear to learn and enjoy upon our father's knee, and then I'll stand and stroke his silver hair and be like him, and he will then love me. So here, the black child is saying, I will shade the white boy from the sun until he learns to bear the heat of God's love, suggesting that the black child is better prepared for heaven and has the power of forgiveness. In order to shield somebody, you're going to have a superior position. The black child explains that both boys are equals, but neither shall be truly free while they are living with the constraints of the physical world. So the white child here is presented as frailer spiritually because he has already been sheltered or protected from the suffering of the black child. Their perspectives of society are not the same. The white child, of course, is not going to have to put up with racism. So the idea is that the black child here is shielding his friend because the black child is in an empowered position spiritually. And at the end there, the speaker suggests that when he shields his friend from the sun's heat, he will be like the white boy who will love the black child. So perhaps the black boy here is striving for acceptance. He believes maybe that the white boy will only love the black child if the skin colour is the same, because the white child can't see past skin colour. And that's quite hopeless in a way, that a young white child conditions or regulates their affection for somebody else based on skin colour. Here, though, there is an attempt to have body and soul, black and white, earth and heaven, all being in harmony. That might purely exist in the afterlife, of course. A number of Blake poems do talk about the afterlife as being kind of the ultimate happiness, which is also sad in a way because it suggests that that stuff won't be here in the living world. So you will only get that acceptance in the afterlife. I think the Chimney Sweeper poem in Experience is all about that. And also the poem Our Sunflower as well. So that is a summary of the Little Black Boy. Slave trade, black and white, inferiority, superiority, and then the depiction of the afterlife and a loving relationship between religion and parent and child. So hopefully that has been useful. Please feel free to put any other comments or ideas in the comment box below. But that is another video all about Blake's poetry. Thank you.